Coca-Cola built great models for this in the 1940s and 1950s and 1960s, and you can use that same logic today in the digital universe.
Influential and thought-provoking minds in marketing, sales, and business. The Business of Marketing Podcast.
Welcome again to the Business of Marketing. I'm A. Lee Judge. When I can, I like to cut to the chase and get directly to the value that you want to hear. So today's guest almost needs no introduction, but I will say he's the founder of SparkToro. He's a master of audience research, a previous co-founder of Moz, and one of the best people to follow if you're interested in learning how to find out where your audience hangs out. So welcome to the show, Rand Fishkin.
Oh, thanks for having me, Lee. Good to be here.
Good to have you here again. So let's get into it, Rand. Just yesterday, I was talking with a client and I used the phrase that you've popularized, zero-click marketing. So tell me, as an inbound content marketing agency, this is really important to us. So for the listeners not familiar with that idea, lay it out for us so we can discuss it.
Yeah, sure. So in the world of digital marketing, for basically the first quarter century that existed, 1996 to about 2021, almost all of the focus was on driving traffic. So essentially, you bought digital ads to drive traffic to your website. You bought pay-per-click ads to drive traffic to your website. You would do content marketing and SEO and every other form of inbound marketing, email, social media marketing, press and PR, all designed to drive traffic to your website. And then from your website to specific landing pages where people would convert and buy from you. And this worked pretty darn well for a long time until all of the major platforms essentially individually realized that sending traffic out to other people was hurting their bottom lines and their growth potential. And so Google started keeping more searches for themselves, answering them right in the results, sending people who are searching for local stuff to Google Maps, sending people who are searching for hotels to Google Hotels, sending people who are searching for flights to Google Flights, sending people who are looking for dictionary definitions to Google definitions, Google Weather, Google everything. The same thing happened on LinkedIn, on Reddit, on Facebook, on Medium, on you name the network, every single one of them prioritizes keeping traffic for themselves rather than sending it out. And simultaneous with that, those platforms started becoming the internet's everything. We stopped going to hundreds of websites every month, and most of us spent most of our online activity around 5 or 10 different platforms that were in our rotations. So this all combines to mean traffic is harder to get than ever. There's more competition for it than ever. The platforms don't want to send it to you. And something I think many marketers probably never realized or didn't think about as much as they should have, which is influence doesn't have to mean clicks. In the offline world, for the first 100 years of the 20th century, right, marketing meant you would try and influence people on a billboard, with a radio ad, with a TV ad, with a guerrilla marketing campaign, with a flyer on the street. None of those things send any traffic to a website, but they all influenced people to potentially buy a product or a service. And that's essentially what zero-click marketing recognizes in the digital world. Zero-click marketing is saying, wait, we don't need to get someone to come to our website to influence what they think about our brand, their behavior, or their propensity to buy from us. So let's invest in doing marketing in the places where our audience pays attention, rather than trying to drive everything to a click and a visit.
So Rand, a few weeks ago, we were both at B2B Marketing Profs Conference, and you said something on stage that I really related to. You mentioned when you were previously talking about clicks and attribution, and I literally had a talk called Click to Close. And it's embarrassing to think about what I professed years ago compared to what's real now. So do you think marketers have caught up to the fact that clicks and attribution are almost gone now or are very difficult to measure?
I think marketers have. I think the problem is more execs, clients, other teams, the CFO, the people who assign budget. Those folks, unfortunately, are still trapped in the world of like the first 20 years of the internet, where they think that they should be able to perfectly track and attribute every sale. And so if a sale shows that it came from Google, well, let's put more budget to Google. Let's do more SEO. Not, hey, wait a minute. Was that a search for our brand name? If so, Google deserves no credit for that. Google is just a navigational device. They might have as well have typed it into the browser, URL. Unfortunately, that logic and thinking is not there yet. It doesn't exist yet. And it's super frustrating, I think, for a lot of marketers who might listen to, Amanda and I talk about zero-click marketing, might hear you on stage and on your podcast talking about it and go, yeah, that's a nice idea. But until my client, boss, team buys into it, I don't get to have the luxury of doing the right kind of marketing. My only corollary to that is it's your job. It's our job as marketers to convince the people that we work with of the reality of the world in which we work. That is part of our obligation. And so, yes, it's fair to say, hey, my boss doesn't yet understand or believe in zero-click marketing. They don't understand that attribution can't be perfectly measured. They don't understand that I can use these other signals to create correlation but not causation between, influence and sales. Well, if they don't understand, it's on you to explain it to them, to get them to buy in. That's part of our job. That's part of anyone's job, right? Is to let their boss and team know how the world works.
And I can tell you that right now, every day, because being that we're a content marketing agency and we're primarily inbound, we're always trying to explain to our clients or pry from their fingers this need to put a link on everything. Like every social post has to have a link. And once we get into explaining, like you said, to marketers that that's not the way to go anymore, not to mention it's squashing your reach because like you said earlier, no platform wants to send you away. The marketer might get that. The next question is, okay, we hear you, Lee, but how do we measure it? How do I prove my job as a marketer if I can't show my CMO that I got tons of clicks on this social?
But you can. You
Okay.
totally can. So here's, I have this post, which I invite anyone to read, called How to Build a Hard to Reach or Hard to Measure Marketing Dashboard. So if you search for hard to measure marketing SparkToro or hard to measure SparkToro, you will find this post. And essentially what it is it's a big old Excel style spreadsheet that at the very top has the top of funnel metrics. Those are things like your social followers, the number of impressions that you got per platform on each of the platforms on the social sharing, or views that you got of your YouTube video, or minutes watched of your LinkedIn videos, right? It's essentially what we historically derisively called vanity metrics.
Mm-hmm.
But those vanity metrics will tell you how many people and how much reach and engagement you're having across these zero-click platforms. And then the next step in that spreadsheet is looking at essentially middle of funnel, which is people coming to your website. So it's visits, searches for your brand, new followers, and the growth of those things is indicative of the impressions and engagement that you're earning one step up. So lots of people are watching my video. Lots of people are learning about my brand. Lots of people are seeing my posts. Well, then they're going to follow me more. They're going to search for me more. They're going to visit my site more. Those visits won't come directly from links, but they will come, right? People will type it into the browser or they'll search for it in Google. They'll come to you. The other thing that's part of that middle step is conversion rate. So if you are creating a positive brand impression and people are liking you, trusting you, knowing you more, your conversion rate should be going up over time, which means you can take a look at, if you have some sort of thing like your funnel includes a step of email subscription and then verification and then a trial of your product. And then, someone buys something or they sign up for an email list and then they buy something and, get it delivered to their house. You should be able to see that metric rising as well. So instead of showing someone, your CMO or your CEO, instead of showing them, hey, here's how many conversions we got, and here's each channel that we attribute them to, you're instead saying, here's how much participation and engagement we got on each channel, and here's how much lift and conversion rate lift we saw over time from those. Can I prove to you absolutely that when we did more on LinkedIn, we got more sales? No, I can't. Can I say that they're strongly correlated? Yes, I absolutely can. You can calculate a correlation coefficient if you want. You can use Pearson's or whatever in Excel if you really feel like getting fancy. But my argument is that works exactly the same way that advertising and marketing worked for 100 years. Coca-Cola built great models for this in the 1940s and 1950s and 1960s, and you can use that same logic today in the digital universe.
Yes.
I'm going to argue that if you can get that buy-in using those metrics, you're going to have a great time.
So Ram, we talked about, the lift, and that's how we try to explain that to our clients, that what things you're doing are working, and the lift to your brand is what matters the most. So let's start with what works and if it's actually lifting your brand. But when they come down to really measuring it, they're going to obviously, because of how they've been doing it, look at things like Google Analytics. And we know this is within our company of one, that when we see lift and we see lift in our Google Analytics, often they're brand searches, and we know it could be coming from anything. It could be coming from ChatGPT, from a click from LinkedIn. We don't know where it's coming at, and they often get grouped into that. So explain, especially for those looking to figure out what ChatGPT or Claude is bringing to them, explain what you're going to see in your analytics that you may not realize of what you're seeing.
Yeah, sure. So there's a great study, I think, done using similar web data last year, and folks looked at essentially the clickstream pattern of ChatGPT and Perplexity and several of the other, Gemini, a few of the other major LLM tools, and looked at the percentage of traffic that they refer. And those numbers are lower than any social network. So we're talking about, less than 1%, less than 0.5%. I think ChatGPT was 0.2% of all traffic that is on that on ChatGPT.com or OpenAI.com goes to another website. You're not going to get traffic from them. But that doesn't mean that people aren't using them, right? They do get millions, hundreds of millions of visits. And people ask questions that could lead to your brand, especially in B2B. But the only thing you're going to see is more Google searches for your brand. Because if it recommends, whatever, SparkToro for your audience research tool, well, then people are going to search for SparkToro. Because ChatGPT does not include by default the URL when they recommend something, the citations, and even when they do, people don't click them. So my advice would be, if you think your audience is likely using LLMs to do research in your sector, the only right move, the only thing you can do is look at your branded search and direct traffic and your referrals from Google, because that is going to be how people tend to reach you. And you just got to be careful. You got to be careful not to assume that because you're getting traffic from Google, Google is the one that is creating that demand.
So set your baselines now, because when things rise, you may not know why it's rising, but if you have a baseline, you know that something's changing it.
I mean, you probably want to set your baseline in 2022.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what you should have done. Yeah. So you mentioned SparkToro. So before we go, I want to make sure. Now, I'll tell you, I've been following the company for a while and did a test a few years back also. I'm really interested in it. And I think it's a little bit complicated to understand exactly what SparkToro does and how it gets that information. So give us an idea of, one, the main purpose of SparkToro, and then two, what's the wizardry behind figuring out, who your audience is, and how do we pull these things together to make sense? Because we're so stuck on this old Google Analytics and analytics from each platform. You have a new way of looking at things that I really support. And so tell us about it, what it does and how it comes about.
Sure. Yeah. Thankfully, Lee, the explanations are incredibly simple.
Good.
So SparkToro, the main purpose is to give you the behaviors and demographics of any describable online audience. So if you want to know what social networks are popular with directors of engineering in Canada, SparkToro can tell you that. If you want to know what YouTube channels are most watched by interior designers in the US, SparkToro can tell you that. If you want to know people who search for tennis rackets in the UK, what podcasts do they listen to, SparkToro can tell you that, right? So behaviors and demographics of a describable online audience. And the way that that data comes about is essentially we get it from three sources. One is social networks. LinkedIn powers our demographics. We also get data from Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and Reddit and YouTube and all these other places. Blue Sky and Threads are starting to get in there too. Then that is combined with data from search. So essentially, what are keywords that people search for, and what are all the sites that appear in Google for those rankings, and what get the clicks. And last, and probably most centrally, clickstream data, which is like a panel of tens of millions of users. We use Datos, which is a great clickstream data company. They were actually recently acquired by SEMrush. And the data that Datos has comes from millions of people around the world and everything that they click on and visit in a stream. So we can essentially say, oh, people who visited this website also visited this website. People who visited this YouTube channel also visited that YouTube channel. People who searched for this thing also went to these places. And that could be anywhere in their journey, right? And we just magically, I say magically, but it's just a bunch of code and math to put all these three sources together and deliver, people who do X also do Y. That's what SparkToro is showing you.
So tell me this. Let's figure out how to get it actionable for the listeners. Let's say, I'll use my scenario. Let's say you tell me that CMOs who follow Rand Fishkin on YouTube also listen to the Business of Marketing podcast. So I know these two things. Question is, how do you know that those are CMOs? And then two, what action do I take when I learn this information?
So SparkToro doesn't show you data about people who follow a particular person on YouTube. That is not one of the search vectors that you can use, unfortunately. But you could, for example, say, I want CMOs in the United States who also are B2B, right? Like I want people who have the words B2B and CMO in their bio, and I want them to be US. And that data, we basically just pull from LinkedIn. So we look at only the LinkedIn profiles that include B2B and CMO and United States. Ta-da! All right, now we have, 22,000 of them. Great, let's analyze their behaviors. And then we look at websites that they visit and keywords that they search for and YouTube channels that they follow and subscribe to and podcasts they listen to and all that kind of stuff, right? And that's just combining social data, search data, and clickstream data.
So do I then go after being on this podcast, or how do I action that? If I know that these CMOs go these places, how do I get there and what do I do?
We at SparkToro don't want to be prescriptive about what you should do with that data. We believe that you are smarter than us when it comes to what your marketing tactics and strategy should be. We're not trying to tell you how to do your job. So if you come to SparkToro and you are trying to solve the problem of which podcasts should we sponsor, yeah, SparkToro's flipping great for that. But if you come to SparkToro and your goal is, I want to build a data-driven persona to understand my audience more deeply so that I can develop a strategy for them, great. Podcast doesn't have to be on your tactics list. Neither does outreach to websites. PR might not be on your list. Maybe you're going to exclusively focus on buying ads and you're just using SparkToro to get general data and an understanding of your audience so that you can make better targeted ads and write the copy and try some experiments. Great, fine. We are not prescriptive about, hey, you should only do these things with our data. Our data is there to answer hard questions that marketers have that come up all the time and give you those answers, but not tell you which thing you absolutely need to do. I think that this is a little frustrating because many marketers are stuck in the sort of SEO tool world. And SEO tools are very much like, fix these things on your pages, get links from these websites, target these keywords with content. And that's not what we're doing. We're saying, we can tell you all of this information about what your audience does on the web. Now it's up to you to decide which strategies and tactics to pursue.
Can you tell me something like, okay, this persona that you've identified, these CMOs, they are more likely to listen to podcasts than they are to read blog articles or maybe subscribe to YouTube channels. Can you tell me something like that?
Yeah. So in the network section, we'll tell you, for example, like are CMOs more likely to use Google than other, American internet users? Are they more likely to use Bing? Are they more likely to use ChatGPT? Are they less likely to use Perplexity? Are they more likely to be on YouTube? Are they less likely to be on Reddit? All that kind of data is in there as well. So you can get that like channel sense. Um, I will say this, if we're talking about something like YouTube or Google, 99% of Americans use them. So
Yeah, we know those things
it's
already.
very
Yeah.
difficult to find an audience that doesn't use those. The real question is that relevant for what you're doing, right? If you are, a B2B targeting B2B CMOs, it might be the case that a lot of that audience is on TikTok, for example. Is that a place that's relevant to your marketing activities? I don't know. I'm not sure that I would go and, you know, do a big investment in TikTok. And this is why I'm saying, right? Like, better than we do whether a channel or a tactic is right for your business. What we can tell you is, hey, look, your audience is moving to large language model tools, or no, your audience is not. Will Reynolds, friend of mine, from Sierra Interactive, runs an agency, and he was looking at a decking client of theirs, right? And they were like, hey, we think that their audience might be moving to ChatGPT and asking them for like, decking supplies and materials. And we were like, I don't know. Here's people who visit that website, and their behavior suggests that they actually use ChatGPT and Perplexity and Gemini and all these other LLM tools less than the average American. I did this recently for a retirement community. Someone was looking at retirement community marketing, and they're like, gosh, are people who are visiting these retirement communities and helping their parents or grandparents or whatever look for, where they want to stay, are they using LLMs? And I was like, nope, not at all. It's like one of the least
That's
used
actionable.
vectors for LLMs in the United States right now. So, and that's the complete inverse of most B2B folks, right? Like, software CTOs, people who are into, trying to figure out whatever accounting software or video software, or they're looking at, big purchases for their companies. Those people are using LLMs a lot.
I was thinking of lots of actionable things as you mentioned it. As putting on my marketer hat, I'm like, you know what? As you said, you can't prescribe it, but I could see how I would use it. Like, do we launch this podcast, or do we launch this YouTube channel, or do we, talk with this particular influencer? I could see how we'd have some better understanding from your data. It's funny you mentioned.
I mean, I think that basically, right, SparkToro can answer all of these questions, like which channels and networks are popular with my audience. Of those channels, which specific accounts or podcasts or channels or creators are popular with my audience on that one network? And then what are they talking about and consuming? What are they interested in? What content do they care about? What keywords are they searching for? And what demographics do they have? Like, are we talking more to women or men? Are we talking to older demographics or younger? Are we talking to college educated? What kind of degrees do they have? What kind of words do they have in their job title and role? Where in the United States, where geographically do they live? So all of that data is in there as well. And absolutely, it can be used in a ton of different ways for all sorts of marketing and understanding and persona crafting and specific tactic questions.
Yeah, specifically the content marketing part. I loved mentioned about what they're talking about,
The
what
new
they're searching
content
for.
section is dope, man. It really
Okay.
is.
But I can't wait to check it out again some more and dig into it deeper. It's funny you mentioned Will Reynolds. He'll be on an episode either right before or right after this one, because we've already spoken. So good.
Yeah.
So before we go, Rand, tell everybody what's on your mind right now and where we can contact you, and about SparkToro, whatever else is going on. Floor is yours.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So let's see. My email is rand@sparktoro.com. Happy to answer any questions about that company or zero-click marketing in general. And Amanda and I do post quite a bit on LinkedIn, so I recommend checking us out there. I'm also moving most of my social activity to Blue Sky. So you can find me there rather than Twitter or Threads these days. Seems like most of marketing community is kind of moving to Blue Sky, which is pretty cool. Great to have that kind of water cooler back for us all. And if you want to check out the SparkToro blog, I do recommend that. We only publish maybe once a week or so, but a lot of times you'll find those short little 5-minute videos that show how to do something, or an opinion piece by Amanda or I about what's going on in digital marketing world. And we try to be very human about it. Like, we're not, it is not like hey, here's a bunch of tactics and a list of bullet points. And we're not that kind of boring blog. We're kind of like the old school, infotainment opinion blog.
That's valuable. I'm sure that's what drives SEO. SEO is new, opinionated, clean, non AI generated, fresh ideas and opinions, right?
Exactly, man. Like, I am so tired of targeting SEO keywords. I never want to do that again in my life. It's so boring. It's so, I don't know. It feels very, 2010s. And I think that the new way to stand out on the web is to get fans, not just clicks.
Yeah,
And that's what we're trying to do.
absolutely. Well, Rand, thanks again for joining us again on the Business of Marketing. And to the listeners, if you're listening to the podcast and want to also see Rand and I, video of the podcast and others are also available in the podcast section of contentmonster.com. Rand, thanks. Talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to the Business of Marketing podcast, a show brought to you by ContentMonster.com, the producer of B2B digital marketing content. Show notes can be found on ContentMonster.com, as well as aleejudge.com. To continue the conversation, be sure to follow the podcast on your favorite podcast platform.